Sometimes becoming stronger is not the same as becoming free. This is what happens to Maki Zenin. She was forced to become strong in a world that treated her as worthless. But the tragedy is the strength that she needed to survive was at the cost of the person that she wanted to protect most. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to use Maki as a mirror for what happens when strength becomes survival, what that kind of strength can cost us, and why true freedom can sometimes require letting other people in. So the first thing that Maki shows us is what happens when strength is built on survival rather than self-growth. Maki's strength is admirable, but it came from being devalued, rejected, and having to prove that her and her twin sister Mai deserved to exist. And maybe some of us can see ourselves in Maki, where we're living in a world where we can't rely on anyone else, so we become fiercely independent, because it feels like everything falls on our shoulders. So some of us didn't become strong because we were supported. We became strong because we had no other choice. And we might feel like we can't be vulnerable with anyone, because when we are, we get punished for it. So I have to become independent, because I can only rely on myself. I have to become disciplined, because failure felt humiliating. And I have to become emotionally guarded, because that gives something others can use against me. And even though it might feel like the weight of the world is just too much to bear, sometimes it feels like we don't have a choice. So life becomes something to endure. And this can shape our identity around resisting life instead of experiencing it. We learn to protect ourselves, because if we don't, who will? And this is when strength can become complicated. The strength we require to survive can become a shield to hide behind rather than a form of freedom. We may not be moving towards something greater. We may instead be creating distance from something that hurt us, so we may hold everything at arm's length. Our pain, our relationships, our need for support, and even the gentler parts of ourselves. Because if I show weakness, I'm right back in that place. This is what Maki had to do. Because she lacked cursed energy, she had to compensate with extreme physical strength. She had to become strong enough so that the Zenin clan could no longer ignore her, dismiss her, or define her worth. And on the outside, that can look inspiring, but internally, it's painful. Because Maki wasn't becoming stronger in a world that loved her. She was becoming stronger in a world that wishes she was never born. So she trained herself to become exceptional in every possible way. And I think some of us know this feeling. We become the person who handles everything. The person who appears to be holding everything together so well that other people stop wondering whether we're struggling. And maybe a helpful question to ask is, what did my strength have to protect me from? And when strength is built on survival, it can become less about becoming who we are and more about rejecting the parts of us that felt weak. And this is the second thing that Maki shows us, the cost of having to become strong out of necessity. Because Maki does become stronger, but that strength cost her something. Her desire to prove the clan wrong, it makes a lot of sense. And the tricky thing about proving others wrong is that it can be incredibly motivating. It might be the very thing that turns your life around. And for Maki, it was the Zenin's clan disdain towards her that fueled her ambition. She challenged them out of spite, but she also wanted to create a place where Mai could belong. So her strength wasn't just from anger. It was out of love, rebellion, and protection. But if we keep trying to prove others wrong, we might not realize just how much our life is still being shaped by them. Because even if we do, we may end up feeling like we need to continue proving that point. So we build a life on success so great that no one can reject us again. We may become terrified of failure because failure feels like proof that they were right about us. And when this happens, there's no room to breathe. There's no room to rest. It's all or nothing. Because allowing ourselves to relax can feel like inviting those people back in to tear us back down. So ambition becomes a goalpost, forever out of reach. And all the while, we might not realize the weight of what it is costing us to overachieve. And I've been there before, where I had to push and push and push, because it felt like the more I pushed, the more distance I created from the people and places that made me feel small. But the thing is, it was never enough. And even when you achieve these goals in spite of everyone's misjudgment, people stop noticing. Because Some people only care about seeing you struggle. They stop paying attention when you start succeeding. And sometimes proving others wrong can become more important than proving something to ourselves. Even if we move away, if we don't detach from these expectations, they follow us. Imagine you could take a flight right now and live somewhere in the world where no one knows who you are and has no connection to your past. Maybe people won't see you through the same lens as the people who hurt you. This is something I tried to do, but nothing really changed because I brought these insecurities with me. I put up barriers. I distanced myself without giving others a chance because I was trapped by that mentality that I was never good enough and that I still had something to prove. And it influenced my life choices without me stopping and asking myself, what do I truly want? So if you can relate, maybe ask yourself this: am I moving towards a life I want, or am I still trying to escape how they made me feel? Because sometimes we're not actually free from the people who judged us. We're just building a life around their judgment. And I think Maki shows this in a really relatable way. Underneath her cold exterior was someone who just wanted to be accepted. When Yuta gives her even a small amount of acknowledgement, she reacts by calling him an idiot. But part of her clearly longs for that validation. And when she was alone afterward, she gets flustered and convinces herself that Yuta's kindness was not a form of acceptance, because she couldn't afford to let her guard down. And this is where Maki's path becomes more painful. When Maki met Toji, the physical embodiment of the physical strength she aspired to, her mindset shifted from what do I need to gain to what do I need to give up. And even though Maki becomes stronger, she loses something deeper. She loses Mai. Mai had no desire to become strong the way that Maki did. Mai wanted something more complacent. She wanted to stay with her sister. She wanted to survive in a way that didn't have her becoming a weapon for her clan. But Maki could not live that way. She would have hated herself if she had accepted the place the Zenin clan forced on her. So she kept moving forward. And this becomes the biggest cost of strength out of necessity. Maki and Mai are twins. They are one and the same. So when Maki loses Mai, she loses a part of herself that can never be replaced. She loses the very person that drove her to fight in the first place, and it leaves her hollowed inwardly. Naoya, one of the people who mistreated Maki for years, which he called discipline, looks at the person she becomes and asks her if she even has a human heart. And Maki replies emotionlessly, no, she took it with her. And I think this line speaks volumes, because sometimes the strength we needed to survive can leave us feeling hollow. We may become capable, but disconnected. We may be powerful, but isolated. We may be respected, but exhausted. And maybe this is the cost of strength when it only comes from survival. It can help us endure. It can help us escape. It could even help us prove others wrong, but it may not teach us how to be free. So maybe the question isn't asking how do I become stronger? Maybe the question is, what is this version of strength costing me? Because becoming stronger may have been necessary. But if strength only teaches us how to protect ourselves and not how to feel safe, then the very thing that helped us to survive can start costing the freedom we were searching for. And this leads into the final point that Maki shows us. Accepting ourselves and others can be the very thing that frees us. Maki is a strong example of strength through resilience. Instead of letting the Zenin clan crush her will, it only amplified it. And some of us may value emotional resilience deeply. Instead of seeing challenges as setbacks, we may see them as opportunities. We might believe that if we can just push through, endure, and keep moving, then it means that we haven't given up on ourselves. And there's something very admirable in that. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Nazi concentration camps, once wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Because when life takes away our choices, sometimes the last freedom we have is how we respond. They may take away my choices, but they can't fully control what I choose to become. So their rejection, their oppression, their cruelty can become part of our strength. Because if we can persevere, then some part of us is still choosing ourselves. And resilience built on survival can feel indestructible. But if we continue living this way, even after our life becomes safer, we might not have realized that instead of building a bridge to support us, we've built a wall that keeps others out. Resilience alone is powerful, but resilience with supportive relationships and self-acceptance is transformative, because supportive relationships can help us accept the parts of ourselves that we learned to isolate. And that's what I think happens to Maki. When she allowed herself to accept help from others, she no longer had to reject the parts of herself that she sacrificed in order to survive. This is a key difference between Maki and Toji. Toji represented absolute physical strength that Maki aspired to. Although we don't know much about Toji's past, Toji likely reached his physical peak without the help of others, but Toji suffered the cost of his strength alone, especially after losing his wife. His raw strength was almost all Toji had. So even though Toji was powerful, he was also broken, lonely, and still shaped by the world that rejected him. And I think Naoya was right about Maki, but for the wrong reasons. Maki is not Toji, not because she was weaker than him, but because she transcended their idea of what true strength was. Toji's self-image was trapped by how others treated him. He had to prove those who called him monkey wrong. But Maki became free of that. She allowed others to push her limit without losing herself in the process. Because the true danger of strength built from rejection is not weakness. It's pride that rejects connection. That's connection to others, connection to our own pain, connection to the parts of ourselves that we were taught were weak. Because a rejecting pride can be a shield from vulnerability. And what gets Toji killed is that he keeps his shield up for so long, it blinds him. That's why he didn't back down from Gojo, even when he knew something was wrong. He needed to prove his worth. The worth that he lacked for himself, which became his demise. He wanted to kill Gojo, the very representation of what the Zenin clan praised, so that they could no longer reject him. But even when Toji thought he succeeded, it still wasn't enough, because he was never enough for himself. He was still trapped by his own emptiness, shaped by years of trauma and abuse. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. I myself had the identity of a loser. I hated myself, and I punished myself for most of my life. I wanted so deeply to be free from associating myself with the identity of how others treated me. And when I started working out, meditating, and taking care of myself, it still wasn't enough. I had to stop rejecting parts of myself that I had exiled, the parts that I thought were weak, shameful, and forever lost. And I think real change happens when we stop running away from those parts and start learning how to make room for them again. Because maybe that's where Toji stayed trapped. He kept running away from parts of himself that were hurt, and his strength just became another way to avoid them. And Maki could have gone down that same path as Toji. Earlier in the story, she rejects Yuta's help with bringing down her clan because she says that there's no point if she doesn't do it herself. And I think this makes sense. When your whole life has taught you that you can only rely on yourself, then help can feel like a form of weakness. But Maki eventually chooses a different path. Not a path of living under the thumb of her clan, and not a path of endlessly proving them wrong, but a path of choosing herself by letting go of her perceptions that had colored her world. Sometime after killing Naoya, he re-emerges as a cursed spirit, far more powerful than Maki could handle on her own. And it's only when Maki puts her trust in Mayo that she is able to grow again. That's what makes this part of the story so important. She lets someone else challenge how she sees the world, and it allows her to understand herself. So when Maki relies on others, it doesn't make her weaker. Maki's true nature was not to become a monster. That idea came from rejecting the endless discrimination she faced. Her true nature was not found through isolation alone. It was facilitated through self-discovery, sacrifice, and from the help of others. Because even if Maki had help realizing her full potential, she still owns her process. Because support was the bridge that helped her to embrace who she truly is. She describes that very experience as freedom. And maybe this is true for us as well. Sometimes choosing yourself is not doing everything alone. Sometimes choosing yourself is allowing others to support you, to believe in you, and to appreciate parts of yourself that you may not have reached alone. So a question you can ask yourself is, if I allowed myself to connect more meaningfully with others and with myself, what might change in my life for the better? And what might start to become possible? Because Toji shows us what happens when we push others away and we isolate inside ourselves. Maki shows us what happens when we let others in and we embrace who we are. Becoming strong to survive does not have to determine the rest of your life. And becoming strong to prove others wrong does not have to be where your journey ends. What matters is what you choose after. Maybe freedom is less about becoming so strong that nothing can reach you, and more about becoming safe enough to let yourself experience life again. I believe that we can all be at our best, just like Maki.